Hi, welcome to Making Healthcare Law Work for You. I'm Julie Janeway. I'm the General Counsel at Advise Health. And today I'm going to have a quick discussion about sources of liability protection. So I know the one you're thinking of right off the bat, but I'm going to start with something you should be thinking of right off the bat. And that is the word prevention. Prevention is the number one source of liability protection that is free pretty much to all of you, and you should be engaging in this all the time. So what I'm talking about here are having effective policies in place that run the gamut of your business, okay? Written policies that have been distributed to the employees and the contractors, and that you have got signed acknowledgements for, and that address everything that needs to be addressed. They need to be written. They can't just be, well, it's our policy, okay? So you've got to have those things. You need to have continuous quality improvement. And that is having a quality team or an outsourced quality team. We can do that at Advise as well. Mitigation and prevention and management measures, okay, for risk management. All of that has to be in place, so I hope you have good risk managers. Continual compliance, making sure that you are complying with all of the relevant rules and regulations, laws, statutes, and other requirements, standards, and guidances. I know that's a lot of those, isn't it? Training and proper training, and making sure you're getting all your annual training because the law changes minute by minute. And then vigilance, which means always watching for what can go wrong and trying to prevent that. And diligence, constantly working at your commitment to excellence. So there's the one that, is going to help. Okay, so that's a good source of liability protection and liability prevention. All right, so the one you were all thinking about was insurance. Liability insurance. So from a med-mal perspective, it is professional liability insurance. And from all kinds of other liabilities, there are other insurances that cover that. So slip and fall at the hospital or on your premises would be general liability, fire, casualty. There's a whole bunch of insurances. I can have a whole one of these on explaining all the different kinds of insurances for you, which mental note. So that is important, but it isn't really liability protection. It's protection from a determination of liability, okay? What is the protection out of it? The attempt at protection is the attorney that the insurance pays for to help you prevent getting that determination against you. So it's really the attorney that is the liability protection there. And of course, they're all vetted and by your insurers and everything else. And they're usually pretty spectacular lawyers, I have to say, having worked with hundreds of them in my career. So the next one is legal privileges. Now, these are things that you may not really be familiar with the fact that they're called privileges, but things like the attorney-client privilege, the physician-patient privilege, the spousal privilege, or even in some places, it isn't limited to just spouses. Sometimes it's to domestic partners as well. So these are things that say that these people cannot be called to testify about things. Now, in a med-mal situation, the physician-patient privilege goes out the door, and it's waived by the patient when they bring a case, okay? Because it's the patient that actually holds the privilege. With the attorney-client privilege, it's the client who holds the privilege. And with the spousal privilege, it is the spouse who is usually under a criminal indictment at that point, who holds the privilege and can prevent the other spouse from testifying. So privileges are really important because they keep information out of the other side's hands, whoever the other side may be. Okay, whether it's a government entity, an agency, whether it is a plaintiff in a civil case, whether it is a prosecutor in a criminal case, those privileges apply unless they have been waived or there is some other area of the law that presupposes that and preempts it. The next one is statutes, like peer review statutes that are what we call public policy statutes that say, look, we don't want people to hide their mistakes. We want people to find them and fix them so they don't happen again. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with peer review statutes and the fact that they keep things out of the plaintiff's attorney's hands. If they were if the material was being used for peer review, so that the physicians, the nurses, to whoever it is, are reviewing what went on amongst their peers, and they are trying to, identify the issue, and then they are trying to fix it so that it won't happen again. Whether it's a near miss or an actual event, it doesn't really matter. That's peer review statutes are state statutes. But the federal statute that is even stronger, and most people don't know about, is the Patient Safety Quality Improvement Act, which is a federal statute, the PSQIA, and it provides a legal privilege, and it provides for confidentiality, but it provides a legal privilege called the Patient Safety Work Product Privilege. And it's actually stronger than the state peer review statutes. So the defense attorneys that you will get through your insurance are usually quite familiar with their peer review statutes. They can usually recite it by heart, like verbatim, but they aren't familiar with the PSQIA and the Patient Safety Work Product Privilege. That's something that I specialize in, and it's based on a system that you kind of have to put in place, not a technology system, but a system you have to put in place to handle that information when you have an event. So if you're interested in learning how to do that and protect that information, because it cannot be used in, it is not subject to subpoena. If it's all properly done, let me start with that premise. If it's all properly done and properly handled, then it is not subject to subpoena or any other court order, including search warrants. It cannot be revealed in discovery, can't be compelled in discovery. It isn't subject to FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. And it is not admissible in any state or federal court or other forum, like an agency administrative hearing. It is not admissible in civil, criminal, unless there's sometimes in criminal, but there's a specific exception that you have to meet the standards for, or in licensing, in a licensing matter. So this is a really broad, much broader than a peer review statute. So this is one of those things that, people should look into. The more prevention that you have around and liability protections you have around, the better off that you're going to be, right? Sometimes you have to actually explain these things to defense attorneys because they're used to dealing in one type of matter, and sometimes you're like, no, we have this. I explained the PSQIA and the Patient Safety Work Product Privilege to entities and organizations all over the country, and to medical malpractice defense attorneys who are spectacular at what they do. But because they've never run across an organization that has this in place, they don't really know how to use it and how to handle it. The next one is your business organization type. So many of you work for entities that end in PC, professional corporation, or PLLC, professional limited liability company, or PLLP, professional limited liability partnership, or corporation, like a hospital, or a nonprofit corporation, which is still a corporation. It just has slightly different rules. And so all of those things, if you've heard the word governance, okay, so governance compliance is extremely important, because what you get when that company is born with one of those initials at the end, okay, is you get liability protection. There's a barrier that goes up that as long as you maintain the rules and you comply with the rules, then you get a certain amount of liability protection that comes with that. So maintaining all of the requirements, especially for practices, this is done easily and daily by attorneys in hospitals and academic health centers and everything else. It's all of you out there who belong to practices and smaller organizations. You must keep your governance documents up, because if anybody comes looking from the government, state or fed, and you haven't got them all together, they aren't done, they're delinquent, they're spread all over the place, you can't find who's got them, it's game over at that point. They're not going to wait for you to try and track it down and call everybody and blah, blah, blah. So one of the things that I do at Advise is I help companies with their governance so that we do it so you don't have to, kind of deal. Finally, we have, your awareness of what is going on in your business, what needs to be done. It's all a version of compliance at some point. There are people to help you with this. You already have enough to do just handling patients and billing. That's the reality of it. I don't care where you work. So it's patients or customers or clients and billing. That takes up everybody's time. So just to let you know, that's one of those things that can help you in your everyday life, understanding some of health law. And I'm going to have a whole series of these things. So come back and join me. I'm going to have guests who step in and tell you all kinds of things that just clarify. And we've got another series that we're doing that is basically called Law as a Second Language, where we explain concepts and terms very short, like 3 minutes or less. We're going to explain concepts and terms that are just going to make your life a little easier when you understand. And you're not going to be left in the dust when when you're talking to lawyers and they're speaking in tongues, as it were. So thanks for watching. Give us a call if you have any questions, if you want anything that we might be able to help you with. You have anything, give us a call. My number and my email are available on the bottom of this video, and I'll talk to you next time. Have a great time. Bye-bye.